The rain hammered against the cracked window of the small diner as Maria pressed her face against the glass, her stomach twisting with hunger she'd grown accustomed to ignoring. She was only 16, but the streets had aged her beyond her years. 3 days without food had left her weak, dizzy, and desperate enough to stand in the downpour, watching strangers eat meals she could only dream of affording. Inside, David Chen wiped down tables with methodical precision, his 7-year-old daughter Emma coloring quietly in a corner booth. He'd bought this struggling diner 6 months ago with his life savings, hoping to build something stable for his little girl after her mother abandoned them both. Money was tight, brutally tight, but he had a roof over their heads and food on their table, which was more than some could say. That's when he noticed her. The girl outside, soaked to the bone, her hollow eyes fixed on a half-eaten sandwich a customer had left behind. Something in David's chest cracked open. He'd seen that look before, in the mirror, years ago when he'd been homeless himself. Without hesitation, David walked to the door and pushed it open. "Hey," he called out gently. "You hungry?" Maria's first instinct was to run. Kindness, in her experience, always came with strings attached. But her legs wouldn't cooperate, and before she could form words, David was guiding her inside, sitting her down in the warmest booth, instructing his cook to prepare a hot meal. "I don't have money," Maria whispered, shame burning her cheeks. "Did I ask for money?" David smiled, sliding a steaming plate of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and vegetables in front of her. "Eat, please." She ate like someone who didn't know when the next meal might come, because she didn't. David didn't hover or ask invasive questions. He simply refilled her water glass and let her exist without judgment. When she finally looked up, tears streaming down her face, he handed her a napkin. "Where are you staying?" he asked quietly. "Nowhere permanent," she admitted. "I aged out of foster care last month. I'm trying to find work, but nobody wants to hire someone with no address, no references, no nothing." David saw himself in this broken child. He understood the suffocating weight of having no safety net, no one to catch you when you fell. "Listen," he said, "I can't pay much, but I need help around here. Washing dishes, bussing tables, basic stuff. You'd get meals and a small wage. There's a storage room in the back, it's not fancy, but it's dry and warm. You could stay there until you get on your feet." Maria stared at him like he'd offered her the moon. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because someone did it for me once," David said simply. "And because everyone deserves a chance." That night, as Maria lay on a cot in the storage room surrounded by boxes of supplies, she made herself a promise. She whispered it into the darkness like a prayer. "One day, when I make something of myself, I'll come back. I'll marry you, David Chen, and I'll spend the rest of my life repaying this kindness." It was a teenager's dramatic vow, born of gratitude and emotion, but she meant every word. Over the next 2 years, Maria worked harder than David had ever seen anyone work. She arrived early, stayed late, and treated every task like it mattered. She enrolled in night school, studying by the diner's dim lights after closing. David became the father figure she'd never had, and Emma became the little sister she'd always wanted. They were her family, the first real family she'd ever known. But Maria was hungry for more than stability, she was hungry for success, for proof that she could rise above her circumstances. When she earned her GED, David threw her a small party. When she got accepted to community college with a partial scholarship, he cried with pride. "I'm going to make you proud," she told him. "I'm going to become someone worthy of everything you've given me." "You already are," David insisted, but Maria shook her head. "Not yet. But I will be." She left for college with $600 David had secretly saved for her, money he couldn't afford to spare but gave anyway. She hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe, and she repeated the teenage promise, "I'll come back for you. When I'm successful, when I'm someone, I'll come back and marry you." David laughed gently, assuming it was youthful gratitude talking. "Focus on building your life, Maria. That's all I want for you." Years passed. David received occasional letters, then emails, then texts as Maria climbed her way up. She graduated with honors, earned a scholarship to a prestigious university, then another to business school. She started a tech company focused on connecting homeless youth with resources and opportunities. Her personal experience became her greatest asset, her empathy the foundation of her success. The diner struggled on. David never complained in his messages to Maria, never asked for help, never mentioned that medical bills from Emma's unexpected surgery had nearly bankrupted him or that he was 3 months behind on rent for the building. Then, on a Tuesday morning 12 years after that rainy night, a sleek black car pulled up outside the diner. Maria stepped out, no longer the hollow-eyed teenager but a confident woman in her late 20s, dressed in a sharp suit that spoke of success but eyes that still held the same grateful warmth. David was wiping down the same counter, older now, more tired, but his smile was unchanged when he looked up and saw her. Maria. She crossed the diner in 4 strides and wrapped him in a hug. "I told you I'd come back." Over coffee, she laid it out for him. Her company had gone public. She was wealthy beyond anything she'd ever imagined. And she'd spent the last 6 months quietly buying the building that housed the diner, paying off all of David's debts, and setting up a trust fund for Emma's college education. "You saved my life," she said, her voice breaking. "You saw a hungry kid and you didn't look away. You gave me dignity when the world had taken everything else." David's eyes filled with tears. "You don't owe me anything. Seeing you succeed, seeing you happy, that's more than enough." "I know I don't owe you," Maria said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "But I made a promise. A silly, dramatic teenage promise, but I meant it." She paused, her smile turning playful. "I said I'd marry you when I was rich. Well, I'm rich now. And I know the age difference is weird, and maybe this isn't what I meant back then, but David, you're the best man I've ever known. Would you consider giving us a chance?" David sat in stunned silence. Emma, now 19 and home from college, had been listening from the kitchen. She walked out, tears streaming down her face, and put her hand on her father's shoulder. "Dad," she whispered, "when has Maria ever broken a promise?" 6 months later, they married in the same diner where they'd met, surrounded by former foster kids Maria had helped through her company, by neighbors who'd watched their story unfold, by everyone whose life had been touched by their kindness. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was something better. It was real, messy, beautiful proof that the smallest acts of humanity can change everything, that kindness echoes across years, and that sometimes the families we choose love us more fiercely than the ones we're born into.